Hare Krishna, everyone, all the devotees, a very warm welcome. So, today we are embarking on a new journey of study of a very, very important Vaishnava scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam. Today is our very first class, and in this very first class, we will try to learn a little bit about this topic, uniqueness of Srimad Bhagavatam, how Srimad Bhagavatam is a very unique Vaishnava literature, and although a lot can be spoken about uniqueness of Srimad Bhagavatam from a devotional perspective, but this class we will focus mainly on non-devotional reasons why Srimad Bhagavatam is very unique. People who are already practicing devotional way of life, bhakti way of life, can certainly speak many things about how Srimad Bhagavatam is so inspiring, how Srimad Bhagavatam is so devotional, etc. But if we learn and understand a little bit about from a non-devotee perspective, those reasons which are non-devotional, those people who are not having so much faith about Srimad Bhagavatam, only purely as a work of literature, as a work of art, how it is so unique. So those kind of reasons also uh, instill a lot of inspiration, specifically in the devotee community, that how the literature or the book that we are going to study is so unique and so special. So this class we will not dive into the specifics of Srimad Bhagavatam, but we will try to glorify Srimad Bhagavatam mainly about its uniqueness, and we will give you 4 non-devotional reasons, and that will, I think, inspire us in the classes to come to take up this study of this very wonderful Vaishnava literature with a lot of enthusiasm and interest. Usually, we would start our class with one of the devotee participants chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra 108 times, that is doing one round of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. But since this is the very first class, I would like to start this class with a small Kirtan, a little musical uh, entry into the world of Srimad Bhagavatam. Uh, so you can, at your location, also try to repeat this Kirtan, but don't open your microphone. That will not be a very pleasant uh, maybe chorus when we are doing this class on a virtual mode. So I will do this Kirtan maybe for 5-10 minutes. जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जनवल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी जय राधा माधवा जय कुंज बिहारी जय यशोदानंदना जय ब्रिज जनरंजना जय ब्रिज जनरंजना जय यशोदानंदना जय ब्रिज जनरंजना जय ब्रिज जनरंजना जय यमुना तीर वनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जयो राधा माधव राधे जयो राधा श्याम सुंदर राधा श्याम सुंदर राधे जयो सीताराम जयो लक्ष्मण हनुमान सीताराम जयो लक्ष्मण हनुमान जयो नरसिंह देव जयो नरसिंह देव नरसिंह देव जयो नरसिंह देव जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज हरि बोल निताई गौर हरि बोल निताई गौर हरि बोल जयो जयो प्रभुपाद 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 जयो जयो प्रभुपाद जयो जयो प्रभुपाद 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 जयो जयो प्रभुपाद जयो जयो गुरुदेव 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 जयो जयो गुरुदेव निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय शिल प्रभुपाद की जय we will chant some of these prayers before starting a discourse on Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयं मुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेष्व भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमा श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः. Okay, once again a very warm welcome to all the devotees, and I see Kishore Prabhu also joining us. A very warm welcome to Kishore ji also. Thank you everyone for joining us in this program. So this slide is about what are we going to do in this particular session, in this particular class, and this slide gives you an overview of high level overview of the topics that we are going to discuss today, maybe in next 1 hour 20 minutes, 1 hour 15 minutes. So there are two sections in the class. The first section of the class, which is the first half of the class, we will be dealing mainly with this topic, Srimad Bhagavatam's impact on Indian culture. How much Srimad Bhagavatam actually has managed to shape our Indian culture, that we will try to get a little glimpse about this particular topic. Then the second part of the class, we will discuss 4 non-devotional reasons why Srimad Bhagavatam is unique. So in the first part, we will try to understand that Srimad Bhagavatam's impact has been very, very significant in shaping India's culture. And when we are studying about a book which has impacted our culture with so much depth and with so much force, then why is this particular book so unique? What are some of those specialities, some of those uh, uh, reasons that this book is unique? And as I mentioned in the beginning of the class, we will be focusing mainly on the non-devotional reasons. For focusing on devotional reasons, we have a lot of time to discuss when we start Bhagavatam regularly, starting from Canto 1, Chapter 1. So we will have a lot of reasons to discuss the devotional reasons. But for those people who even don't have a lot of faith in the Vaishnava philosophy or in the Vaishnava way of life, even those people might find Srimad Bhagavatam very unique. So those non-devotional reasons, total 4 of them, we will discuss in this class. And these 4 non-devotional reasons are listed in this particular slide. The very first reason is that the language of Srimad Bhagavatam is very special. How this language is very special? Although we all know the language of Bhagavatam is Sanskrit, but even when we are talking about Sanskrit, how this Sanskrit language is actually very special when it is used in Srimad Bhagavatam. Second reason is it has a very remarkable, consistent manuscript history. So manuscript means when a book is written in olden times, the book when it was written, it used to be written with hands on palm leaves, on handmade paper or homemade paper. And when it used to get copied, it used to get copied through a person, through a scribe. So whenever the copy of a book has to be made, we have to go to a scribe and he would copy. And in the process, the person might commit some mistake. So we will see that how uh, compared to many other Vaishnava literature or many other texts that we study as part of our religious development, spiritual development, how Srimad Bhagavatam has a remarkably consistent manuscript history. Then the third point is the quality of its poetry. Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam essentially is a work of kavya. It's a poem. And what is so special about this poem? So we will look a little bit into that part. And structure of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam is a literature, is a work of a literature written by Srila Vyasdev. So how Vyasdev has uh, how Vyasdev has developed this book, which is spread in 12 cantos, how the structure of this book is different from the structure of other Vaishnava literature that we typically study or that we typically know of. So that is primarily the overview of the whole class in a nutshell in this slide. There are 2 sections: its impact, Bhagavatam's impact on our culture, and what are those 4 non-devotional reasons which makes Bhagavatam unique. And these are language, its consistent manuscript history, the quality of its poetry, and structure. Before I begin this class and start to discuss the topic in detail, I would like to make an acknowledgement to this very scholarly gentleman from our SCON movement. Prabhu's name is His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu. His legal name is Professor Ravi M. Gupta. Prabhuji is a chair of religious studies and serves as a director of religious studies program at Utah State University, United States. Prabhu has been born and brought up in a very traditional Vaishnava culture. Actually, Prabhu never went to school in his childhood days, and he was homeschooled by his mother, uh, Arudha Mataji. And Prabhu actually studied language like English and other kind of uh, studies that he made in his childhood using Srimad Bhagavatam. And now he's a very wonderful scholar, a very nice devotee, uh, who guides, who is not only a professor and serves and contributes through the academic world, but also is a very, very learned scholar and a very wonderful devotee, a very scholarly devotee, has done a lot of contribution in the world of academics, specifically in terms of Vaishnava literature. This class, which I'm going to present to you, is actually based on the lecture that Prabhu had delivered at Govardhan Eco Village in Maharashtra, in near Mumbai and Palghar district, in March 2020. So in March 2020, I happened to attend a 10-day course on in Govardhan Eco Village, titled as Bhagavad Prabha. So the very first opening lecture was given by Radhika Raman Prabhu, and I was very much intrigued by this lecture. It had a very deep impression on my heart. Although the reasons given were non-devotional about uniqueness of Bhagavatam, but it inspired me a lot, and my respect towards this great Vaishnava classic literature actually increased multiple times. So uh, I would personally would like to share the same enthusiasm I developed after I heard Prabhu's lecture with you also, assuming and believing that the class or the content of the class will actually inspire you also in the same way as it inspired me, and that inspiration might be very helpful in the time to come, in the years to come, when we are going to embark upon the detailed study of Srimad Bhagavatam. So, as I was mentioning, the class has two parts, and in the first half, we are going to discuss a little bit about Srimad Bhagavatam's impact on Indian culture. And you will see there are some few photographs on this slide, which are also kind of representative of the content that we are going to discuss in this particular half. So you see, this is a picture of a book titled as Eknati Bhagavat. Now, Eknati Bhagavat is a book which is actually based upon Srimad Bhagavatam, but it is written in Marathi. Similarly, we have a lot of oral tradition of Srimad Bhagavatam, which you see one of the famous Kathakar of Srimad Bhagavatam, based in Mathura, Vrindavan, etc. And we see specifically in North India, we see a very strong culture of organizing of Bhagavat Saptah. And here you see the third picture is Manipuri dance. So how Srimad Bhagavatam actually has impacted the dance forms of India, various dance forms of India. And similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam's stories, Srimad Bhagavatam's tales have actually also inspired the architecture of our country. Many temples that we see in our country actually depicts a lot of images, lot of sculptures, which are based from Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is giving you a very brief nutshell in terms of pictures how Srimad Bhagavatam has impacted Indian culture. Now we will try to see and learn a little bit about each of those aspects in a little more detail. So primarily three books in the uh, Indian culture have shaped the the way our Indian culture looks like today in one of the most significant ways. And those three books are, the very first book is Ramayana, the second book is Mahabharat, and when I say Mahabharat, I by default I include Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and the third one is Srimad Bhagavatam. So these three books have been monumental, mm, rather defining in the way the Indian culture is today, and the way the practices of Indians living in this country, the way they behave, the way they practice, the way they think. Uh, you will see in their language, you will see in their behavior, the way they invite guests, the way they serve guests, etc., etc. You can name any aspect of Indian culture, and you will see there will be uh, some presence of Ramayana, some presence of Mahabharata, some presence of Srimad Bhagavatam in their ways of living. Among these three books, people are very much familiar with the first two, that is the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Hmm? And so much is the impact of these books is that Ramayana actually is widely studied in the universities world over. There are various departments in these universities which actually organize dedicated full-time official courses on Ramayana. Similarly, on Mahabharata also, specifically the chapters which are related to Srimad Bhagavad Gita are very, very widely studied all over the world. In fact, Srimad Bhagavad Gita is one of those books which has actually been most translated text. So there are primarily three books all over the world which has been translated the most. One is Srimad Bhagavad Gita, one is Bible, and one is another classic literature from China. I'm forgetting the name, but that book is also there. The three main books are one of the most translated texts. But although Srimad Bhagavatam is one of those books which have shaped Indian culture in a very significant way, but very few people know about Srimad Bhagavatam. uh, Even though its impact on our culture is only matched by Ramayana. So Ramayana is only one another book which has shaped Indian culture so seriously, so deeply. The only other book that match the impact of Ramayana is Srimad Bhagavatam. And we can see Srimad Bhagavatam's impact on the literature, on the dances of India, on the music of India, and the sculpture of India, and you name any other cultural aspect, you will see the impression of Srimad Bhagavatam along with Ramayana uh, in those walk of life. And this is not only what I am saying, but I'm quoting here one of the eminent professors from Rutgers University. He's Mr. Edwin Bryant. He's a professor of religion of India. He's Professor Edwin Bryant. His main department or main area of study has been religion of India. He belongs to Rutgers University. He's saying the Bhagavata ranks as an outstanding product of Sanskrit literature. Perhaps more significantly, the Bhagavat has inspired more derivative literature, poetry, drama, dance, theater, and art than any other text in the history of Sanskrit literature except for the Ramayana. So, Professor Edwin Bryant is a very scholarly person, and he has made that statement after doing a lot of elaborate study on various religious books, various religious texts that are there in India. So now we will focus a little bit one by one on Srimad Bhagavat's impact on literature. Now, how Srimad Bhagavatam has impacted the literature? The impact can be understood by the extensive commentaries, specifically Sanskrit commentaries that are available on Srimad Bhagavatam. So there are around 90 commentaries that are available on Srimad Bhagavatam. Most of these 90 commentaries are not available to us these days. Somewhere around 25-30 commentaries are still available on Srimad Bhagavatam in Sanskrit. But how do we know about the other commentaries? Because we see their references in the existing commentaries. That is how we know that these commentaries also used to exist, but for some reason they are not available at the moment with us. The other book that has a lot of other commentaries, specifically in the Vaishnava literature segment, is Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The commentaries on Srimad Bhagavad Gita actually runs in hundreds, several hundreds, like 700, 800 commentaries must be there. But Srimad Bhagavad Gita is a much shorter work. We must remember that compared to Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavad Gita has 700 verses, while Srimad Bhagavatam actually has of the order of 18,000 verses. It is a mammoth work. It is a very big, it's a work of a large volume. So 18,000, it's quite a significant amount of verses. So the other two books that can match the volume or uh, the largeness of Srimad Bhagavatam is Mahabharat and Ramayana. So when we compare the commentaries in Sanskrit that are available on Mahabharat and Ramayana, there are only handful of other Sanskrit commentaries, only few. But Srimad Bhagavatam actually comes from that segment of Vaishnava literature which is known as Puranas. And in other Puranas, when we compared Srimad Bhagavatam, there are only hardly one or two commentaries. Actually, Vishnu Puran probably might have two commentaries in Sanskrit, but other than those Puranas, uh, there are no other Puranas which have as much commentaries as Srimad Bhagavatam have in Sanskrit. So with this, you can see that if a book is commented upon by many authors, by many scholars, it actually speaks volumes about its impact on people's mind, on people's thinking, etc. So not only Sanskrit commentaries, but Srimad Bhagavatam has also generated a lot of derivative works in vernacular rendition. Now, what do we mean by derivative works in vernacular rendition? We can understand with an example of, say, for example, Srimad Valmiki Ramayana, which is Ramayana written by Valmiki ji in Sanskrit. But on that Valmiki Ramayana, which is based on Sanskrit, there has been another retelling of Ramayana known as Ramcharit Manas. And Ramcharit Manas has been written in local language like Hindi or Awadhi, and it has been written by Tulasidas. So the original work is Valmiki Ramayana in Sanskrit, but the derivative work which is mainly based on the original work in the vernacular rendition. Vernacular rendition means the local language, and that is Ramcharit Manas. So you can see that most of the time the language is Sanskrit language has been the language of learned people, scholarly people, learned and say I would say the intellectual class of people. However, when some literature like this is translated or is produced, is retold in the vernacular language, then that language, that literature actually seeps deep into the masses. That becomes the household work, household book of the masses. Not only the household work, even illiterate people, if it is available in a local language in a very sweet poetic form, then the local people, it becomes very popular among the local people. Like Ramcharit Manas, if you go to North India, is actually more popular, much more popular compared to Srimad Valmiki Ramayana. So similarly, Bhagavatam also has shaped up a lot of derivative works, and here I am presenting some examples only. And some of these examples are like Eknathi Bhagavatam. So this Ekanathi Bhagavatam, I'm trying to show some pictures also. I mean, you can find various other type of pictures also, but I chose to uh, pick the picture that is I see from Gita Press Gorakhpur. It's a very renowned publication in North India. So it is presenting Sri Eknathi Bhagavat, which is actually written in Marathi. It is based upon Srimad Bhagavatam. Then Rukmani Swayamvar, again from the Eknathi Bhagavat. The Rukmani Swayamvar part, again told in Marathi, has been told in extensive detail. Now you see the picture of Rukmani Swayamvar here. Then there's another retelling of Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam. In Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mainly about the life of Lord Shri Krishna. So that uh, uh, in Bengali, that work has been translated or has been written in Bengali by the title as Sri Krishna Vijay. So this is the cover page of Sri Krishna Vijay. So the author of this book is Gunaraj Khan. It has this author Gunaraj Khan has another name, uh, uh, but that is Sri Krishna Vijay. This is very popular. It is actually a household book. If you go to Bengal, this is a household book there. And another derivative work in a vernacular rendition is in Telugu known as Pothana Bhagavatam, and this is the cover page of the Pothana Bhagavatam. So this is there was one saint in Telugu in Andhra, and the saint by the name Pothana, he has translated the Bhagavatam in Sanskrit in Telugu. So this is Pothana Bhagavatam. And there could be many more other derivative works, but I'm trying to pick and show to you some of those one which are very famous here. Also, we can also understand the impact of Srimad Bhagavatam uh, by the fact that there are 1,000 manuscripts of Srimad Bhagavatam which are mostly in Odia, available in Odisha State Museum. So Odisha State Museum stores 1,000 manuscripts of Srimad Bhagavatam. Mostly these are in Odia. What the picture that you see here is the entrance gate of this Odisha State Museum in Bhubaneswar. So this is about little bit about Srimad Bhagavatam in written text, in derivative vernacular language, and so on. So we have Sanskrit commentaries more than around 90. Then we have so many other derivative works like we discussed Eknathi Bhagavat, Srinath, Sri Krishna Vijay, etc. But apart from that, there is a strong tradition of reciting and speaking Srimad Bhagavatam in oral text. Oral text means in the form of katha. Hmm. So even today, if you go to North India, there is a very strong tradition of organizing Srimad Bhagavat Saptaha. Every nook and corner in any city of North India, if you go and you just pass by on the road, I can assure you that in every city you will find a hoarding announcing uh, the organization of Srimad Bhagavat Saptah by some speaker from Vrindavan, from some other part of India, etc., etc. And people would be going, participating, listening to that Bhagavat Saptah uh, for 7 days. Now, so strong is this culture that it inspired one of the Australian authors, McComas Taylor, who actually got so interested that he wrote a book on this particular topic. So in this book, he has actually studied this tradition in a lot of detail. A study on this tradition is done by an Australian author, McComas Taylor. Now, this is the cover page of that book. McComas Taylor, 7 Days of Nectar, Contemporary Oral Performance of Bhagavad Puran. It's something like a book of maybe 250, 300 pages. So elaborately why there is a very strong culture, what is the impact of this culture, etc., etc. On from various angles, McComas Taylor has discussed this subject matter in the form of a book. Then, after discussing this Bhagavad in literature, Bhagavad in oral text in the form of katha, Srimad Bhagavatam is also seen very clearly uh, present in the various art forms, various art performances in the form of dances, in the form of drama, etc. And to give you some example, the Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam is regarded as an inspiration for many classical dance styles in India. Typically, I would think there are maybe something like 8 or 10 famous dance styles that are practiced or performed in Indian subcontinent. But Srimad Bhagavatam has been the inspiration of the dance styles such as, for example, Kathak. So the picture that you see here, the lady actually uh, in the form or making a mudra like Lord Krishna holding a flute. And then in the Manipuri dance form, this picture is showing Lord Krishna and along with his consort, probably Srimati Radhika Rani. Like that, Kuchipudi, Odissi, Bharatnatyam, all these dance forms that you see is all about Lord Krishna, and the inspiration is 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Apart from that, if you go to North India, specifically Mathura Vrindavan's side, that you will see that Ras Leela, which is the 5 main chapters from Canto 10, known as Rasa Panchadhyay, uh, the Ras Leela part is played in the form of theatre, folk theatre, in the regions of Mathura and Vrindavan, Uttar Pradesh, in UP. So, like that, Srimad Bhagavatam has a very strong presence in the art form also of India, in the form of dances and drama. Now, talking about literature, oral tradition, dances, dramas, etc., We can also see the presence of Srimad Bhagavatam in stone. So text in music, text in dances, text in theater, text in oral tradition. But now text, Srimad Bhagavatam's text in stone. How? So you will see the many temples in India. If you go and visit, you will see their architecture is greatly shaped by the stories of Srimad Bhagavatam. And one of the important work that uh, has been done on the architectural impact of Srimad Bhagavatam has been done by this author Dennis Hudson. So this gentleman has done a very detailed study of a temple in Tamil Nadu, by the name Vaikuntha Perumal Temple of Kanchipuram. In Kanchipuram, there is a temple called Vaikuntha Perumal, and if you see this temple, Vaikuntha Perumal Temple, uh, and you want to study deeply on the architecture of this particular temple, then you will notice that different levels in this temple, there are multiple stories in this temple. There are different rooms of this temple. They actually depicts the various cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam has 12 cantos, and a detailed study of this temple of Vaikuntha Perumal in Kanchipuram, uh, you will notice it has actually coming from the they are depicting the various cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this gentleman Dennis Hudson has written a very elaborate book by the title of The Body of God, an emperor's palace for Krishna in 8th century Kanchipuram. So this temple was built in 8th century, and it's a book. It's a quite a long book, something of the order of maybe 450, 500 pages. A very elaborate book on Srimad Bhagavatam's impact on the architecture of this particular temple. Not only this Vaikuntha Perumal temple, which is in India, present day India, but we also see the impact of these uh, stories of Srimad Bhagavatam in the sculpture of Angkor Wat temple of Cambodia also. This is the image you see is the image of the Angkor Wat temple in Cambodia in Southeast Asia. So many of the depictions are coming from the pastimes of Bhagavad Puran, and there are many depictions of Srimad Bhagavatam that you can see and visit in Cambodia in this particular Angkor Wat temple. But one of the important ones is the Samudra Manthan Leela. Samudra Manthan Leela, if you can see here, this is from the photograph from Angkor Thom city in Cambodia. And here you can see the Asuras and Devas are being represented here. So you will see the Mandar mountain, the Vasuki serpent, and the Asuras and Devas are lined up on the either side of this Mandar mountain to churn the ocean. There are few other images from the Angkor Wat temple of the Samudra Manthan Lila. Here you can see the Mandar mountain, the tortoise, and then the one side there are Asuras, the other side there are Devatas, and so on. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam in stone. So in this first half of our talk today, I've tried to cover this particular aspect, how Srimad Bhagavatam actually has impacted the Indian, has shaped the Indian culture, and how much has the depth of the impact that we try to study in the form of the literature, the commentaries available, the uh, derivative work that has happened on Srimad Bhagavatam, the oral tradition that is available and seen still till date in the form of Bhagavad Saptah, then in the form of music, dance, drama, then in the form of sculpture, and so on. So it has a very wide and broad impact in terms of shaping the way India looks like today. But the question is, if some work like this, Srimad Bhagavatam, has been so impactful that it can shape the all the aspects of any civilization, then there must be something really very special about this particular book. And what are those something unique reasons of Srimad Bhagavatam? That is something which we are now going to discuss in this particular section of our class. And what you see in the slide in front of you is one of the manuscripts of Srimad Bhagavatam, because in this particular section we are also going to talk about something to do with the manuscript history of Srimad Bhagavatam. So you can see these are handwritten scripts. Not only handwritten scripts, there are graphical images also have been made on these scripts. So this has been neatly written by some of these scribes in Sanskrit. This particular script is in Sanskrit. Uh, so let us see what are those four non-devotional reasons. So we discussed these non-devotional reasons in the beginning of the slide also, in the beginning of our class also, but just to refresh your memory, the four reasons were language of Srimad Bhagavatam, how it is unique, how Srimad Bhagavatam's manuscript history is remarkably consistent, and Srimad Bhagavatam is a work of kavya, it's a work of poetry. What is the quality of the poetry mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam? We will have a look at that quality of poetry also. And the structure of Srimad Bhagavatam, how the text of Srimad Bhagavatam overall, how these 18,000 verses have been structured and organized very nicely in the book by author Srila Vyasadeva. So let us look at each of these aspects one by one. First of all, we will discuss about language of Srimad Bhagavatam. So you will see the slide having a lot of bullets. So just try to follow me when I am putting my cursor on the bullet point. So we are focusing on that particular bullet point. So when we are talking about the language of Srimad Bhagavatam, so we all know generally that language of Srimad Bhagavatam is Sanskrit. But Srimad Bhagavatam actually uses a very special type of Sanskrit. Uh, and when we compare the type of Sanskrit used in Srimad Bhagavatam with the other Puranas, because Bhagavat is also a Puran, it is known as Bhagavat Puran. Many times you will hear Srimad Bhagavatam being mentioned as Bhagavat Puran. So it's a Puran. Now there are many other Puranas also available. So the Puranas typically use a particular type of Sanskrit, and this particular type of Sanskrit is known as classical Sanskrit. Classical Sanskrit. And this classical Sanskrit is not so difficult to learn. In fact, it is mentioned uh, that if we embark upon 2 years of full-time study of classical Sanskrit, we get so much of knowledge about Sanskrit that we are well versed in this classical Sanskrit. And the kind of language classical Sanskrit is, if somebody is from a Hindi background or somebody is from a Telugu background, which are actually more close to the Sanskrit type of more close to Sanskrit as a language, then it is not so difficult to understand the Sanskrit used in these Puranas. For example, like in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, we study this verse in 18th chapter. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam raj aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami ma shuchah. Now, this is a very important verse from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, but if you closely look at the Sanskrit in this particular verse, it is not so difficult to understand. Somebody from Hindi background or Telugu background can make it easily. Sarva dharman. Sarva means all. Dharman means dharma. Parityajya. Tyajya means actually to leave. It is coming from the Hindi word tyag. Sarva dharman parityajya mam ekam. Ekam means only me. One. Mam means me. Mam ekam sharanam vraja. Vraja means go. Take shelter. Shelter. Sharanam is shelter. So the same word sharanam is also used in Hindi as sharan. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. Sarva papebhyo means sarva pap, all the sinful activities. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshishyami. Mokshishyami means I will liberate you from all those sinful activities. Ma shucha. Ma shucha means don't fear. So if you analyze this particular verse coming from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, we can understand the Sanskrit is not so difficult. And as I was mentioning, the 2 years of full-time study of classical Sanskrit in any of those universities, either abroad or in India, one can actually learn this classical Sanskrit easily. And the test of Sanskrit, and the test that you have learned, you have been able to learn classical Sanskrit is that one is able or one is capable of translating the verses of Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Mahabharata. So Mahabharata is also a work based on Sanskrit, and Gita is also actually a part of Mahabharata only. So once somebody has done this study of classical Sanskrit and he's given this book called Bhagavad Gita and asked to translate the verses there, he can translate the verses easily. Now, when I say translate the verses of Bhagavad Gita easily, I don't want to sound that it is easy to understand Gita. So, understanding Gita is one thing, but able to translate the Sanskrit mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita is another thing. So, you can translate the Sanskrit easily, but understanding and going into the depth of the meaning of those verses, relating each of these verses with each other, that is something a little more difficult. But Sanskrit, as such, after doing a 2 years of study of full-time study of classical Sanskrit, it is not that difficult. But Sanskrit used in Srimad Bhagavatam is the most difficult Sanskrit. Most difficult. And when I say most difficult, I mean most difficult. Most difficult means there is nothing beyond more difficult Sanskrit than what is being depicted in Srimad Bhagavatam. And how do I support my point? There is a saying in Sanskrit, like we have saying, uh, we have kahavat, we have muhavaras, uh, coming from the traditions. So there is a similarly there is a saying in Sanskrit, Vidya Bhagavata Avadhi. Vidya Bhagavata Avadhi. What does it mean? Vidya Bhagavata Avadhi. What does it mean? This is Sanskrit phrase. What does it mean? It means Bhagavatam is the limit of one's learning. So if somebody wants to test their knowledge of Sanskrit, then actually Srimad Bhagavatam is the limit. So if somebody is able to understand, decode, crack, translate, etc., etc., Sanskrit that is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, then certainly he's supposed to be the Pandit or the scholar of Sanskrit language. Now, how do we understand a little bit more about this particular aspect? How do we appreciate more about this? One example is that many words that are found in Srimad Bhagavatam, hmm, that are not found elsewhere in Sanskrit literature. There are many Sanskrit words that are only found in Srimad Bhagavatam. You cannot find these words anywhere else in Sanskrit literature. Some of the words that are found in Srimad Bhagavatam have a special meaning, and that meaning is only connected in Srimad Bhagavatam. You don't find that word being used in that particular sense, in that particular meaning, elsewhere outside Srimad Bhagavatam. And one of the examples is this verse. If you look in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 15th chapter, 22nd verse. In this verse, this particular word comes Uchchepitam. Uchchepitam. Vaktram Uchchepitam. Now, this particular verse has a meaning which means being kissed. जैसे like we call in Hindi chumna, being kissed. So this particular word Uchchepitam comes in the sense of being kissed by the Lord nowhere else in Sanskrit language. So this particular canto is about the four Kumaras departing to Vaikuntha, and when they depart to Vaikuntha, the author Vyasdev has narrated the beauty of Vaikuntha planet, and it is being mentioned that the palaces in Vaikuntha planet are so nice, so clean, so big, so sparkling, so lustrous, and so on. And they are so nice that even one can see their shadow, their reflection in the walls, in the floors of these palaces. And when the various consorts of Lord Narayan, Lord Vishnu, when the various Lakshmis of Lord Vishnu see their reflection on the floor of these palaces, they feel as if they have been kissed by the Lord, by Lord Vishnu. So a very beautiful description has been given in Srimad Bhagavatam. And while giving this description, the word used is Uchchepitam. And this word Uchchepitam is used in the sense of being kissed by Lord Vishnu nowhere else in the Sanskrit literature. And as I was mentioning to you in the beginning of the class, that this lecture I have uh, based upon the another lecture that I happened to listen from Professor Ravi Gupta or Radhika Raman Prabhu of Utah University. So in that lecture, Radhika Raman Prabhu was mentioning, actually Radhika Raman Prabhu himself has done a book on Srimad Bhagavatam where he has done some translation of some selected portions of Srimad Bhagavatam. Something like Srimad Bhagavatam, 10% of Srimad Bhagavatam, he has translated on his own, and he has published a book on that particular translation. So while Radhika Raman Prabhu was doing that translation work, he had to look to a Sanskrit dictionary to understand the meanings of various Sanskrit words being used in Srimad Bhagavatam. And one of the standard oldest Sanskrit dictionary that is available to us till date is Munir Williams. So this Munir Williams dictionary is a standard Sanskrit dictionary. And while Radhika Raman Prabhu was looking for the word meanings of some of these words that appear in Srimad Bhagavatam in Munir Williams, then the Munir Williams dictionary provides the meaning of that verse, meaning of that word. And typically dictionaries, when they provide the meaning of the word, they also provide an example. They also provide a sentence from where that word has been used. So to the surprise of Professor Ravi Gupta, to the surprise of His Grace Radhika Raman Prabhu, what he found that when the example of a sentence is given in Munir Williams, actually the same verse has been mentioned that it is actually coming from Srimad Bhagavatam. So here is the situation where he's trying to look at the meaning of the word. He goes to the dictionary, he refers that word in the dictionary, and the dictionary points back once again to the same verse which actually he's actually looking and studying and trying to understand the meaning of it. Now this is really amazing, this is really surprising, because there is no other place where that word has been used in that meaning. Now typically if you want to know how these dictionaries are written, you know, these dictionaries are written uh, when the editors of these dictionary and when the authors of dictionary find a particular word being used in a different usage, and when they find that word has been used in a different usage sufficiently elaborately and for a sufficiently long period of time, then only that particular word actually qualifies to enter into a dictionary. Give you an example. So the word, for example, tweet. Hmm? Tweet is an English word which has been typically used to represent, to explain the sound of a bird or the chirping of a bird. But recently, we also have tweet in the sense of people using Twitter or people posting their messages on Twitter, uh, which is an application in an internet portal. Hmm? People use this communication portal or social media portal platform called Twitter, and when they post their message there, they mention that I have tweeted this. This is a tweet from so and so. So if there is a word tweet, and if somebody use this word tweet in some another sense means not in the sense of chirping of the bird, then the word, the sense in which the one person is being using this word doesn't actually qualify to enter into the dictionary, because it is being used only once. So maybe there is a mistake this person is making, but then the second time it is being used, the third time it is being used, fourth time it is being used, and now many people are using it in the same sense by everybody. Now then it becomes a case for the author or for the editor of a dictionary that this word actually not only means chirping of the sound of the bird, but it also means this also means a entry or a message posted on a application platform or a social media platform on internet known as Twitter. So that is also known as tweet. So how come if the word is only used in Srimad Bhagavatam at a particular verse only once, how can then it actually qualify to enter into a dictionary like Munir Williams? It is only because when this word has been used in a particular sense in Srimad Bhagavatam, but when it has been commented upon by many other authors, many other writers in the time to come, that everyone who is writing a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam actually is mentioning this word Uchchepitam as being kissed by Lord Vishnu. The second one who writes another commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam also use this word in the sense being kissed by Lord Vishnu. Like that, there are commentaries and commentaries and commentaries after commentaries, and this word is again and again being used as being kissed by Lord Vishnu, and the reference to this word is only Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is how impactful Srimad Bhagavatam is in terms of its language, the uniqueness of its language. And Srila Prabhupada used to say, our founder Acharya from ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada, he would always used to say that Srimad Bhagavatam can be understood in parampara only. Parampara means in the disciplic succession, that you hear from your guru, then you translate or transmit the message to your disciple, then the disciple translate to his disciple, and so on, like this in a parampara fashion. So not only the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, the message of Srimad Bhagavatam has to be understood in parampara, but also the meanings of the word that are being used in Srimad Bhagavatam has to be understood in parampara only, because there is no other way to understand the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam, because the word that is being used in Srimad Bhagavatam is found nowhere else in Sanskrit literature. This is how unique this literature is. So uh, that is one very special aspect of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now let us develop a little more about this particular topic, language of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now here, Srimad Bhagavatam Sanskrit, as I was mentioning in the previous slide, the regular language used in other Puranas is actually classical Sanskrit. But the Sanskrit that is being used in Srimad Bhagavatam is very closely related to the Vedas. And when we talk about Vedas, we are talking about Rig Ved, Yajur Ved, Sam Ved, and so on. And these are Shrutis. Hmm? But Vedic Sanskrit is different from classical Sanskrit. As I mentioned, classical Sanskrit is easy to learn. A 2-year study, full-time study, you are learned in classical Sanskrit. But Vedic Sanskrit is very different and very difficult. And an example of two words being used in Vedic Sanskrit and the same word used in classical Sanskrit is this word called dhimahi. So this particular word dhimahi actually comes from where? Probably those who are very closely connected with Indian culture, they would know that this word dhimahi actually comes from Gayatri mantra. Om Bhur Bhuva Swa, right? That Gayatri mantra is there. So this word dhimahi comes from there. And this word from Gayatri mantra, Dhimahi, actually comes from, and from where this Gayatri mantra is coming? Gayatri mantra is coming from Rig Ved. What does Dhimahi means? Dhimahi means meditate upon. I meditate upon. मैं आप पर ध्यान करता हूं. I meditate upon. So this the word Dhimahi, or the word or the meaning I meditate upon, is not used in the same way as Dhimahi in classical Sanskrit. In classical Sanskrit, it is known as Dhyayena. Dhyayen. So this is one example where we can understand uh, this particular word Dhimahi actually comes in the very first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 1, the very first verse. And let me recite that verse to you. Here is Srimad Bhagavatam in front of me, the very first canto, and in Chapter 1, the fourth line. Dhamna स्वेन sada निरस्तकुहकम satyam param धीमहि. Satyam param dhimahi. So the last line is translated as, I meditate upon that supreme person because he is the absolute truth. Satyam param dhimahi. So dhimahi is actually very much indicative of Vedic Sanskrit. It is not indicative of classical Sanskrit. Another example, how Srimad Bhagavatam actually is very closely connected with the Vedas we can see when we study this story of Pururava and Urvashi. Story of Pururava and Urvashi. So this story of Pururava and Urvashi actually first appears in Rig Veda. And apart from Rig Veda, it is repeated many times later in many other Vaishnava literature, like in Puranas and so on and so forth. Many times this story is appearing in the Vedic literatures. But every time we see this story being reappearing in other Puranas and another text, there is a difference in the story. There is some change in the story that you see. The story of Pururava and Urvashi. This same story of Pururava and Urvashi is also seen in Bhagavatam also. And when we compare the story of Pururava and Urvashi with the story that appears in Rig Veda, they are very closely matching. There is very less difference between the two stories. This is another indication that actually Srimad Bhagavatam is very Vedic in its character. It is very Vedic in its character. So then third example about Bhagavatam's Vedic character comes from the third verse of the first chapter of first canto. So the third verse mentions Nigam Kalpatoror Galitam Phalam. We have actually studied this verse in detail in our Bhaktir Samrat Sindhu class also. And this verse goes like this: Nigam Kalpataror Galitam Phalam Shuk Mukad Amrat Dravya Samyutam Pibat Bhagavatam Rasamalayam Muhuravo Rasika Bhuvi Bhavuka. So Nigam Kalpataror Galitam Phalam. What does Nigam means? The word Nigam means Vedic literature. Kalpataror means Kalpataru, or in English we call it desire fulfilling tree. Then Galitam means ripened, and Phalam means fruit. So it says Nigam Kalpataror Galitam Phalam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is actually the ripened fruit of Vedic literature. Again, in the third verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, we get a big hint that Srimad Bhagavatam actually is very closely connected with the Vedas. Nigam Kalpataror Galitam Phalam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of Vedas, not only in essence, but also in the language and its character as well. It is very Vedic in nature. So because it is very Vedic in nature, which is very different from the Puranas, and the Puranas actually use classical Sanskrit as their main mode of communication, but Srimad Bhagavatam has retained its very Vedic character, and it is very Vedic in nature, not only in terms of essence of Vedas means Vedas is a huge body of text. There are a lot of things mentioned in Vedas, but ultimate purpose of Vedas is to understand Lord Krishna, to surrender Lord Krishna, to worship Lord Krishna, to dedicate one's whole life for the service of Lord Krishna. That is the main essence and the final message of the Vedas. So not only the essence it conveys, Srimad Bhagavatam conveys the same message of pure devotional service to Lord Krishna, but the language it is using to convey that message is also very much Vedic in its character. That is the main point, and that makes Srimad Bhagavatam a very unique literature. So that was point number 1 about uniqueness of Srimad Bhagavatam. Now we move to point number 2. Srimad Bhagavatam has a remarkably consistent manuscript history. Remarkably consistent manuscript history. What does it mean? I gave you a brief introduction in the beginning of the class, but let me repeat it here for the benefit of all the devotees who joined a little late in the session. So before the advent of printing press, a book was copied manually. Like somebody has written a book and the manuscript of that book is available. You are also interested to read that book. Then what happens is that you go to a scribe, you go to a professional person available in the market, and you enter into a contract with that person that we will give you the manuscript of the original book, and you actually kindly help me by making a copy of that book. So in the olden times, there was no printing press. The paper was also not available like we have in these days. So these manuscripts were written on bark leaves, or they were written on handmade paper or homemade paper. So paper was expensive. It was not available in abundance. It was expensive. It was not easy to get that kind of paper. So, and if you somebody wants to make a copy of a book or a manuscript, there has to be a lot of dedicated effort to do that uh, particular project. So like these days we go to a photocopy shop to make a copy of a book. That day we have to those days, in olden days, we have to hire a scribe who would professionally do it for a payment, for for some remuneration. Now, while making a copy of a particular book, the scribes would commit different types of mistakes. Different types of mistakes. Like even today, if I want to make a copy, if I'm given a lecture note of somebody and I want to copy the same lecture note manually, while transmitting that particular text in my book, in my copy, I will make several type of mistakes. And the kind of mistakes they would make are not difficult to understand. For example, they will make innocent mistakes or sometimes make not so innocent mistakes. Now, what are the examples of innocent mistakes? They probably might miss a word. There's a word written in some verse, and while copying, they overlook it. They miss that word, or they look at that word but miscopy that word. There is a spelling mistake. They may have to write a word in a particular way, but they don't write it in a particular way. They make a spelling mistake. Or the third type of mistake is I skip. I skip is a special type of a mistake. For example, I have been given a text. There's a paragraph. There are 3, 4 paragraphs on a page, and I'm copying that paragraph to my own sheet of paper. Now I'm looking at the paragraph and I'm making a copy. Looking at the paragraph, making a copy. Now what happens is sometimes, for example, a word comes in the paragraph, maybe tomato. A word comes in the paragraph, tomato. Now there are in a paragraph there are, for example, 10 lines, mm, and the first line ends with the word tomato. But there is also a fourth line in the paragraph where the line or the sentence ends with tomato. So while I am making a copy, I finished copying one line where it was ending with tomato. Now when I look it again, I look for tomato, and instead of going to the first line, now I go to the fourth line where again the tomato comes, and I look at that tomato, and I go to the fifth line and start once again copying the text. Now what happened? I made a mistake. What mistake I made? I missed writing line number 2 and line number 3 and line number 4. Uh, I directly jumped to the line number 5 after line number 1. So that is called I skip. Young children actually keep on making that mistake most of the time. You would see if they are copying some text, writing from their textbook, they would keep on doing that mistake most of the time. So these are some of those innocent mistakes that scribe can make. Then there are not so innocent mistakes. Not so innocent mistakes means that the scribe start editing the text. Now this scribe which we hire, he reads this line in the original text and he starts to apply his intelligence. Now this particular line, actually this is a mistake. This is something, it should not be written like this. And then he makes his own editing and he writes that text. That is a editing mistake. Here the scribe is doing his own editing while copying the text. Then there could be, for example, if I'm making a copy of a manuscript, and I got a manuscript, or I got a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a manuscript, and I'm making a copy from a copy of a copy. Then sometimes what happens is, then if I'm borrowing somebody's copy, then that person might have made some notes, made some personal notes while reading that book, while reading that page, and he make that note in the margin of that particular text, in that particular page. Now, sometimes the scribes may do, they may think that whatever notes that person has made in that particular page are actually part of the book, and they also copy those notes. And sometimes when these scribes make I skip and they recognize that they have made an I skip, how will they rectify that mistake? Because they cannot rub now, they cannot erase the text. What they will do, they will maybe make a small pointer somewhere and then make another pointer of the same type somewhere at the in the margin, and whatever missing text is there, they put it there, that this particular uh, portion has to be first of all read what is written in the margin, and then somebody has to follow. Now, sometimes the scribes may think that what is written in the margin is not actually the text missing from the I skip, and they fail to add that text which is there in the margin. So the bottom line, dear devotees, is that while making these while making these copies, the scribes actually commit different types of mistakes of different types of complexities. Now, when in the past these copies were made, another copy was made, copy C was made, copy D was made, and so on, with so much of passage of time, whatever edition now I have on my table probably might have mistakes of scribe A, who originally copied it from the original manuscript. It also has the mistakes of scribe B, C, D, and some mistakes that he might have added while making the copy. So whatever now we have on our desk right now is actually coming from various scribes with various kinds of mistakes and so on. So in order to rectify these kind of situation, these kind of mistakes, and in order to understand what actually was the original manuscript uh, would be like, the different intellectual people, different people all around the world, all around India, etc., would make a critical edition. Then a critical edition is produced after studying all manuscripts available. So what these team will do, they will collect all different types of manuscripts. They will critically study these manuscripts in a very critical fashion, in a very intelligent fashion, and will try to reduce and remove as many errors like these that I have been mentioning here in these bullets. Uh, they will try to remove those, and then a critical edition will come out for a more proper study of that particular manuscript. And an example is available. Example is a critical edition of Mahabharat was done by Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. Now, if you try to Google around about the critical edition of Mahabharat and what is the work that has been done by Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, this institute is in Pune, and this was a very mammoth task and was taken up quite sometimes few 30-40 years ago. I think in 1960s this task was taken by lots and lots of intelligent people, scholars all around India. They collected all the various versions of Mahabharat available, and they got together and they made a critical edition of Mahabharat. And it's a very big work. Mahabharat actually is over 1 lakh verses, probably more than that. And for all those 1 lakh verses, Sanskrit verses, a critical edition was produced by Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, because there were so many differences in Mahabharat in various different type of editions that were available at that time. Huh? And they came up with this critical edition. Now, uh, something similar has been mentioned by Madhvacharya, Sripad Madhvacharya, a very famous and a very reputed scholarly acharya in Madhva Vaishnava tradition. So Sripad Madhvacharya has written a book called Mahabharat Tatparya Nirnay. In Mahabharat Tatparya Nirnay, Madhvacharya has noticed, has acknowledged that the text of Mahabharat has been changed or corrupted at several places. So the text of Mahabharata that we used to have is actually not representative of the original Mahabharata, and he has identified at several places where the changes should be made. So that is what he has done in Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnay. Similarly, in the critical edition of Mahabharata by Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, many of those kind of mistakes that were written or made by these scribes have been removed. Now, the Mahabharata or the text of Mahabharata that we see today is quite, I would say, refined in terms of its content, and the mistakes are very few. Specifically, the edition that has been produced by Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. But still, there has been a history where a manuscript history of Mahabharat, which has not been so pure, I would say error free or mistake free, and so on. So uh, whenever we try to read Mahabharata, there is always a iota of doubt whether actually that was the real intent of the author of Mahabharata when it was written. But compared to Mahabharata, when we see Srimad Bhagavatam and when we study the manuscript history of Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that Srimad Bhagavatam's manuscript history is remarkably consistent over thousands of years. There is hardly any difference between various manuscripts that has been available of Srimad Bhagavatam till date. Has been very few mistakes or few inconsistencies. And why I'm saying so? I'm saying so because a group of scholars in Ahmedabad did a critical edition of Srimad Bhagavatam few years ago, and they found very few inconsistencies. Even when they found an inconsistency, the meaning was very much identical. Meaning was very much identical. And to give you an example, like we have this verse in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvatah. That is what you will see in verse number 4.9, chapter 4, ninth verse. But sometimes when we hear Srila Prabhupada, our ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada's lectures in the past, we find that sometimes Srila Prabhupada will not say evam yo janati, evam yo veti tatvata. He would say evam yo janati tatvata. Srimad Bhagavad Gita. But evam yo veti tatvata or evam yo janati tatvata actually are very much identical. The meaning has not changed. Although the wording has changed, but the meaning has not changed. So similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam has been very consistent in manuscript history. There are very few inconsistencies, and whenever these inconsistencies were found, the meanings were found identical. So the changes or any kind of digression or deviation of from the original manuscript history is actually not at all there. So because I just now talked about Mahabharata, so sometimes people also get this idea that Srimad Bhagavad Gita is also coming from from Mahabharata. So if Mahabharata manuscript history has not been very consistent, it is likely that Srimad Bhagavad Gita's manuscript history has also not been very consistent. But let me tell you that Bhagavad Gita is also a very stable work. It is unlike Mahabharata, the other text that is found in Mahabharata. And the reason for this is there have been many commentaries on Bhagavad Gita that has been written. Because this work has been so important, there have been many commentaries written by many Vaishnava traditions, many even in Shankara tradition also commentaries are available. And when one tradition decides to write a commentary on a particular text, then that tradition actually preserves that commentary very religiously. And it is very difficult to have a deviation when a commentary has been written on a particular work. And not only many commentaries have been written, it is a very widely circulated text. Not only very widely circulated, people actually have memorized the text. Even if the book is lost, the book is still there in the memory of the people. So, for example, if I say Sarva Dharman Parityajya Ganesham Sharanam Braja, or Sarva Dharman Parityajya Rahul Sharanam Braja, then immediately it is caught. immediately, because it has been memorized, it is widely circulated, it is widely deeply uh, ingrained into the memory of the masses. So having a deviation on work like Srimad Bhagavad Gita is next to impossible. Next to impossible. So, like Srimad Bhagavad Gita is also a very stable work. And even if there is some inconsistency, there are, for example, in whatever may be the case, if you find a possibility or a situation where there are two different words found in two different manuscripts of a particular text, then acharyas would try to consider the pathantara, meaning when there are differences. Pathantar means there are two parts, there are two readings of the same text, and there is antar, there is a difference. So one text says this word, another text says this word. So when the acharyas are writing commentaries on these books, they would consider the meaning of that work or that particular text both from the uh, pathantar point of view also, that one manuscript is saying this, and if we take that particular meaning, the meaning is like this. If the other manuscript is saying like this and we take the meaning of the other manuscript, the meaning goes like this. So acharyas would also consider the pathantar meaning when there are differences or discrepancies found in various manuscripts. So the whole point, dear devotees, is that what you are going to study now in the form of this book called Srimad Bhagavatam, huh, uh, I would say with a lot of confidence, the kind of text we are studying in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam has a very stable and a remarkable, consistent manuscript history. So this is the original work of the author himself, Ved Vyas, that we are going to study, and that makes Srimad Bhagavatam very consistent. That may not be the case with other Vaishnava literature, maybe Puranas and so on, like Bhavishya Purana. You will see a lot of uh, uh, differences are there, and there are various versions of Bhavishya Purana and so on. But the point is, Srimad Bhagavad Gita has a very stable and a consistent manuscript history. And the bottom line to all this particular section that we are discussing right now is that it is very important to discuss works like Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam with people in general. And why it is so? It is mainly to preserve its culture, preserves the message. So one way to preserve the message of a book is by printing the book. But the short way of preserving the message of the book is by reading the book regularly. Not only reading the book regularly, actually studying the book with details, with scrutinizing study, and not only scrutinizingly study, actually memorizing the book by heart. So when we read the book, when we study the book, when we memorize the book, actually we preserve the message of the book for ages, for generations to come. And as Vaishnavas, as devotees, it is actually our moral responsibility to not only read, study the book, but actually by heart the book in its essence, in its message, so that we can also continue to pass on the tradition for not only in our families, but also in our communities, in our societies, to whomever we come in contact with. We can pass on this tradition in a way which is unadulterated, which is completely pure, which is completely coming directly from Lord Sri Krishna. So that was about Srimad Bhagavatam's consistent manuscript history. Now coming to the third reason why Srimad Bhagavatam is so unique. Here we will try to understand that Srimad Bhagavatam is unique because it's an excellent work of poetry. And that's what we cannot say for other kind of Vaishnava literature, Vaishnava books. And I will come to that point of poetry a little later. But we try to understand why the poetry aspect of Srimad Bhagavatam is so significant. And in order to understand the poetry aspect, the significance of poetry aspect, we need to understand that Bhagavatam is trying to teach something to us. Bhagavatam is trying to deliver some important message to us. And there are various ways this message can be delivered, this message can be taught, this instruction can be given. And some of the popular ways or some of the traditional ways of delivering a message is like an order or an instruction. And the way these books like Vedas teach, they actually teach like a guru. Like a guru means heavy. So guru gives an order. And when guru gives an order, the disciple has to obey it, has to follow it. So it is heavy. For example, Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara, Atithi Devo Bhava. Now there is uh, no ifs and buts. Like for example, Vada, Chara, Bhava. All these Sanskrit words are orders. They are instructions. They are to be followed. Satyam Vada means speak the truth always. Dharmam Chara, always tread the path of dharma, always tread the path of ethics and morality. Atithi Deva Bhava, treat your guest always like a demigod, always like a god, as a very important person. So Vedas teach like a guru, an order or an instruction. That is the mode and style of teaching in the Vedas. So this is one style of teaching. Then Puranas teach like a friend. Puranas teach like a friend. How? Suggestions, stories. So whenever we are arguing or communicating with a friend, so we are, for example, we are discussing with a friend some problem of ours. Then how does a friend actually teach us? The friend teaches us by giving his own story. See, my dear friend, 10 years ago, actually, I was in the same situation like you. And when I was in the same situation like you, I did like this, I did like that, and so on and so forth. And it helped me to come out from that situation when I followed that path. So he is not instructing the friend, he's actually sharing a story with this friend. So that is in a way of suggesting the friend or in a way of telling a story to a friend. So an example of this storytelling we see in the Puranas. So like for example, when the Pandavas fought this battle of Kurukshetra, they were very morose. Yudhishthir Maharaj was very sad that because of me, so much of bloodshed has happened. And there would be nobody more unfortunate than me in this whole three worlds. I'm the most unfortunate person on this planet, on the three worlds. Then one of the sages in his court narrated the story of Nala Damyanti. And when Yudhishthir Maharaj heard the story of Nala and Damyanti, they actually realized that more fortunate than us actually was Nala, who had to go through all these kind of hardships and so on and so forth. So we are not going into the detail of Nala and Damyanti story here, but the point to make you is that when Yudhishthir Maharaj heard this story of Nala and Damyanti, he felt very better. He felt much better. He felt much relieved after hearing that story. So that is something like Puranas teaches us like a friend, telling stories, telling suggestions, like that. So it is not like an order. So when we give someone an order, that actually has to happen in a relationship where the there is a relationship is of a guru and a disciple. That way this message in a form of an order can actually work. The instruction can go through much easily. But when the relationship is not like that and we have to teach someone, we have to do it like a friend. Then coming to the point of poetry, and as I was mentioning that Bhagavatam actually is a poetry, is a remarkable work of poetry. So the poetry teaches us like a lover, like a wife, uh, who loves us so dearly. The poetry teaches us like a lover. And how does a wife teaches us? How does a lover teaches us? By gently persuading us. So for example, we are sitting in the night, in the evening, having a dinner. Yeah? And the wife is serving the dinner. Wife notices that the husband actually is in a very good mood, and wife has some suggestion to make. Don't you think our family has grown up? We have now two kids. Our requirement has gone up. Don't you think we should do some alteration in the house? We should actually expand the house a little bit more. Now the husband hears this, and he just ignores the suggestion and he continues with his dinner, and the wife actually drops the topic, and then she starts discussing something about something else, and so on and so forth. And like that, maybe something later, sometimes later, again the same situation, something, a gentle persuasion by the wife. So suddenly this kind of thing happens that husband little later down the line, 1 year down the line, 2 year down the line, actually starts to believe that it's a good idea. And it is not only a good idea, but actually it is my idea, like that. So that is how the poetry teaches like a lover. It is a very gently persuasive way of teaching through a poetry. Another example of a poetry, how the poetry indirectly suggests, actually this example comes from uh, this work of Kumar Sambhava. And Kalidas has written this poetry called Kumar Sambhava. And in this Kumar Sambhava, there is a story of Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva has lost his dear wife Sati. And now, because he has lost his dear wife Sati, he has gone into moroseness. He has gone into a cave. He has restricted himself into a cave. And all the demigods around the world, around the three worlds, are now worried because Lord Shiva, because he has secluded himself into a cave, the work of creation cannot go along. So the Devatas approach the Kamdev. And when the Kamdev approaches Lord Shiva becomes very angry and he opens his third eye. The Kamdev is burned to ashes. That's where the name of this Kamdev becomes Ananga. Ananga means who has no anga, who has no body, like that. And then the story goes on, and the Devatas are still worried how this thing will happen, how this problem will be solved. And then they go to the sages. The sages form a marriage committee, and this marriage committee actually goes to these kings of the Himalayas, Parvata, and the daughter of Parvata is Parvati. And the sages starts to glorify Lord Shiva to Parvata. And Parvati is indirectly hearing the glories of Lord Shiva. And the way Kalidas mentions that how Parvati Devi, how the poet, how the commentator of that book, Kumar Sambhava, understands that Parvati is now in love with Lord Shiva, has now actually has given her heart to Lord Shiva. That there's a verse in Kumar Sambhava in this book where, after hearing the glories of Lord Shiva, Parvati Devi actually started to count the petals of the lotus that she is holding in her hand. Now, at that point of time, the commentator mentions that the counting of that this unusual act this lady is doing, the counting the lotus, the petals of the lotus, is actually is an indicative that Mother Parvati has given her heart to Lord Shiva and has accepted Lord Shiva as her husband in her heart. So subtle is the delivery of message from poetry that if you are a poet and if you have to say something like that, I love you, then actually it is a blemish on the on the quality of the poetry that you are writing. So such a nice subtle way the poetry actually conveys the message that that it is very beautiful and it is very subtle in nature. So like that, Bhagavatam teaches in all three ways. It teaches us like a guru, it teaches us like a friend, and it also teaches us like a lover. So Bhagavatam is unique in the sense that it teaches us in all three possible manners, which is not seen in any other book of Vaishnava literature. An example of Bhagavatam teaching like a guru, we see this phrase dharmam tu sakshat bhagvat pranitam. Whatever is the word of Bhagwan is actually dharma. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagvat pranitam. That is an example of Bhagavatam teaching like a guru. There are many wonderful, delightful stories in Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is an example of Bhagavatam teaching like a friend. And then, as I was mentioning, Bhagavatam is a work of poetry. And that is where we say that Bhagavatam, through this poetry, through this excellent poetry, actually teaches us like a lover, like a wife, with very gentle persuasion. So we will see in Bhagavatam excellent poetry like Gopi Geet, excellent poetry like prayers of Queen Kunti. And the way these poetries are written, the way these poetries are sung, the message in these poetry is goes through in a very subtle and a very sweet way across to the listener of this poetry. And some corroboration from various exalted scholars across the world on the quality of Bhagavatam poetry is one gentleman by the name Daniel Ingalls. He is a Wales professor of Sanskrit at Harvard University. He considers 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam as the most beautiful poetry. Similarly, another scholar, Professor M. Narsimachari, he is the head of Department of Vaishnava Studies. Professor Narsimachari is no longer available with us. He passed away in 2013. But he was the head of the Department of Vaishnava Studies in University of Madras. He was also a visiting professor of Sanskrit at Oxford University. He mentions, after having reading all the Sanskrit literature, there is nothing more beautiful than Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, I was quoting the lecture of Professor Ravi Gupta. And this is what Professor Ravi Gupta told in his lecture, that Professor he personally invited Professor Narsimachari from University of Madras to Oxford University for as a visiting professor. And Professor Narsimachari was giving a lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam there. And when he was giving the lecture on Srimad Bhagavatam, he 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 mentioned to Professor Ravi Gupta, Radhika Raman Prabhu. He said that, Ravi, actually I have read everything that is available in Sanskrit, and I'm not being arrogant about it. Actually, I have read everything in Sanskrit. Any literature you name in Sanskrit, I have read it. I have done all that work. But when I read Srimad Bhagavatam, I was really moved. It really moved to tears when I read Srimad Bhagavatam. So that was the emotional realization of this very scholarly devotee, Professor Narsimachari, personally telling this to Professor Ravi Gupta. And these are the photographs of these two gentlemen. Daniel Ingalls, Wales professor of Sanskrit at Harvard University, and Professor Narsimachari, head of Vaishnava studies in University of Madras. So when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand right from the beginning, right from the very first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, it announces very boldly that it is a work of Kavya. So the very first verse that is written in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is using one of the longest meters. And this meter is known as Shardul Vikriditam. Shardul Vikriditam. Shardul Vikriditam means playing of a tiger, play of a tiger. So this verse is, uh, now let me just recite this verse. This verse from Srimad Bhagavatam is Janmadyasya yato vanvayadi taratas chartheshvabhigya swarat तेने ब्रह्म हृदयादि कवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरया तेजो वारि मृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि. Like this, you can see this verse is Shardul Vikridit. This is a 17 syllable verse, one of the longest meters. Now, if you have to compare this particular meter, Shardul Vikridit, from the other Puranas, the verses or the meters used in other Puranas. So typically you will see that in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in Mahabharata, in Srimad Valmiki Ramayana, the typical meters that has been used are Anushtup, which is also popularly known as Shloka, and Trishtup. So Anushtup is 8 meter, eight syllable long. So there are 4 charanas there, and each charana is 8 syllable long, 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, like 32 syllables. Similarly, Shardul Vikridit is 17 plus 17 plus 17 plus 17, like that. And Trishtup is actually 11 or 12 syllables long. So you would see that other Puranas, like maybe Skanda Purana or Padma Purana or Srimad Valmiki Ramayana or Srimad Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharat, the syllables are 8 meters, 8 syllable, the meters are 8 syllable or 11 syllable long. But Srimad Bhagavatam, the very first verse, the very first shloka is Shardul Vikridat. So boldly announcing that it's a work of Kavya. And not only Shardul Vikridat is being used, but every time there is a change in the mood of the message, the meter changes throughout the book. So you would see 5, 6, 7 meters being used in Srimad Bhagavatam. In Bhagavad Gita, only 2 meters are being used. In Ramayana, Valmiki Ramayana, only 2 meters are being used. Either it is Anushtup or Trishtup. But in Srimad Bhagavatam, you would see all kind of meters: Raj Hamsi, Shardul Vikridet, Anushtup, Trishtup, and maybe Vasant Tilaka, like that. All different kinds of meters are used in Srimad Bhagavatam. That boldly mentions that it is a very beautiful work of poetry. And at some places you will see that different verses can be translated in completely different meanings. So these verses in Srimad Bhagavatam actually have been intentionally written by the authors like that. So the Lord of the Lord Krishna actually have been described and explained in Srimad Bhagavatam in a very glorious way, in a very beautiful way. So that also makes Srimad Bhagavatam a very unique work of poetry and a very unique work compared to other Puranas. Now coming to the last part of our class, and this is I would cover pretty quick. We will actually talk about this particular aspect when we are studying Srimad Bhagavatam also. So I will mention that Srimad Bhagavatam is a very structured work. It's an unusually coherent and structured work. And other Puranas are not so structured. Other Puranas, the way they have been written, actually is something like a casual dialogue going on between two friends. A casual dialogue. For example, when you are meeting with a friend, you're talking about maybe life at office, then slowly the conversation changes and you're talking about the favorite sports of yours, and then you made a visit to a restaurant a little uh, few days ago, and then you start talking about the recipe of various food items in that restaurant, and then the topic then jumps to some broken relationship you are having, you are going through in your life, and so on. So the Puranas in general, they are talking in a very haphazard way. The topics are keep on changing, jumping from one topic to the another topic and to the another topic, like that. But compared to to other Puranas, Srimad Bhagavatam actually is very coherent and a very structured work. So the main question answered in Srimad Bhagavatam is actually talking about this one question: what is the duty of a person who is about to die? That question is asked by Parikshit Maharaj to Shukdev Goswami. And Shukdev Goswami answers this question in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in 2 chapters. And the answer that Shukdev Goswami gives is that we have to hear, remember, and glorify Lord Krishna. That is the duty of the person who is about to die. And you asked this question to me, Parikshit Maharaj, I gave you the answer. Then what happens? Then uh, Parikshit Maharaj asked to Shukdev Goswami, okay, if that is the duty of that person, then why not we do that duty right now? And then Shukdev Goswami starts narrating the various glories and pastimes and aspects of Lord Krishna and so on. And that's how the Bhagavatam continues and grows. So Bhagavatam, actually, you can study Srimad Bhagavatam from the structure of the question and answer that are being done in this book. So a question is asked, the speaker gives the answer, the speaker formally announces that you asked this question to me, I have now answered that question to you. uh, Now can we move forward? And then the another question is asked, then again the answer continues, like that. Srimad Bhagavatam comes as a package, small packages. So the question and answers are done, and these each of these question and answer, if you study Srimad Bhagavatam, they're actually small packages of information that are being discussed in this book. And that makes Srimad Bhagavatam a very coherent and structured work. And it is very a suitable book, very much suitable book for embarking upon a systematic study that we are going to start from next Sunday onwards. That organized systematic study, it is a very good book. And Srila Prabhupada, if you see, he has recommended to study Srimad Bhagavatam starting from first canto, all the way moving from second canto to third canto to fourth canto, and continuing till ninth canto, and then once we are done and assimilated everything till ninth canto, we are then ready to understand the nitty-gritty details of pastimes of Lord Krishna, which are described in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the first canto, first two cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam are considered as the lotus feet of the Lord. It provides entry to the text, and then the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam actually is known as the face of the Lord. So like that, Srimad Bhagavatam is a very, very structured text, and that is what I have tried to explain to you in this particular slide. So with that, I would come to the conclusion of our class. I'm sorry it has taken a little bit longer, but given the importance and relevance of the study that we are going to embark, I think a little extra time spent should not hurt the devotees. And I see the attendance has not gone down, although we have exceeded 13-14 minutes. So thank you very much. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Any takeaways, any comments, any questions that devotees might have, we can now discuss that. I have also prepared two more slides on the historical reasons why Srimad Bhagavatam is lesser known. And I will not cover this slide in this particular session. I will, the slides, you can read it in your own time. They are self-explanatory. In case you have any question, you can ask me question around that particular topic little later. But if you have any other question, maybe we can take it now. Thank you very much. And I see there are a lot of new devotees that have joined to us. And let me welcome Vijay Lakshmi ji. I think Vijay Lakshmi Mataji was already there with us. Vinayak Prabhu, Venkat Raman Balasubramaniam ji, welcome sir. Vandana Mataji also is coming now for the first time to our class on Bhagavatam. So welcome Mandaji. Ruby's iPhone, I see. Welcome to you also, madam or sir. I'm not sure. And I think I've covered most of the devotees. And thank you very much to all the devotees. Thanks a lot for your patience. It was a bit long class, but I see you patiently heard it. Thanks a lot. The recording of this class will be available through a posting on YouTube. I will share with you after the session. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, we can discuss. Thanks.
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Prabhu.
Krishna.
Okay, yes, one by one, sir. Thank you. Yes, Kartar Prabhu, you like to say something?
Ji, with your permission, and
Yes.
with other my Satpati permission, I'm really, really thankful to you and very, very excited listening and learning first time Bhagavatam and knowing it has three complete segments of Guru, Friend, and Poetry,
Mhm.
which will be really, I'm looking forward for every class.
Yeah.
And with this, I will thank you very much. But only
Thank you,
one
sir.
question I had in my mind
Mhm.
is you said in between during the class, is Mahabharat is in the Gita or is the Gita in the Mahabharat?
Gita is in the Mahabharata.
Ji,
Mahabharata is a
thank
very
you.
long work.
Ji,
It's
ji,
almost more than 1 lakh verses, and
ji,
Gita is
ji,
only 700 verses. It comes in the
ji,
Bhishma
ji,
Parva of
ji.
Mahabharata.
So Gita
Yeah,
is in Mahabharat. Gita is sort
yeah,
of a part of Mahabharat.
correct.
Thank you, Guruji. Thank you. All glories to my Guru. And God bless you with a happy, healthy, long life.
Thank you,
Keep
sir.
us enlightening us.
Thank
Hare
you, Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Yeah. Any other question? I would say, Ishwar Prabhu, you were saying something?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I only wish to congratulate you on this beautiful introduction. Very passionate, very powerful, and I would say bang on introduction. And we are looking forward to more exciting classes in
Yeah.
future. God
Happy to. Yeah,
bless.
happy to see that the same enthusiasm has transferred to the devotees. Thank you very much. Also, Vandana Mataji, Vrindavaneshwari Mataji is raising her hand. Mataji, you would
Hare,
like to say something? Yeah.
yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes.
Dhanyavad.
Dhanwad.
Prabhuji, I just wanted to know whether there are certain lessons how we can learn to speak out those Shardul and Anushtup Chanda.
Okay.
How
Yeah, yeah.
can, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So if you like, we can organize a separate session on Sanskrit from Srimad Bhagavatam. So I can help you understand the various chandas or the various meters that are used.
Yes,
So
I would
that particular
really
class can
appreciate.
give you a good idea of how to
Yes,
recognize those chandas and how
yes,
to recite those chandas. So that
yes,
will make the study of Srimad Bhagavatam or the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam enjoyable to all of you.
yes.
So
Definitely.
later on, I can organize one session on the Sanskrit of Srimad Bhagavatam,
Please do.
specifically that is useful for our own purpose. I will do that.
Please do. Please do. I
Yeah,
will request you to kindly organize it.
sure.
Thank you so much
Uh,
for this
thank you,
class.
thank you,
Very useful.
thank you, Mataji. And I see Sure Prabhu also raising his hand. Yes, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Had a couple of questions.
Mhm.
One, you mentioned there will be, Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses. So what will be the approach we will be taking? We'll be dwelling upon each of the verses or
No, no.
select verses. What will be the approach?
Typically, the approach will be that you can say that we are dealing now with 335 chapters all across 12 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. So our target, first of all, would be we will actually approach this study chapter wise. But I would say that it may at times it may not be strictly very chapter wise. Generally, normally, and usually it will be chapter wise. We will try to finish one chapter in one class. But many times we will find that there are certain chapters, certain verses that are very very important, very useful and very significant. So we may, because we don't have a very rigid deadline that we have to finish this in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, we will actually go in a relaxed manner, in a pleasurable manner. Uh, and at times, you can also give me feedback. The devotees who are participating in this class can also give me the feedback that we would like to relish the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam in a much more detailed way. So we can slow down also. But for the time being, my plan is one class, one chapter, uh, which is not a very rigid rule, but at times we can actually focus on few verses, important verses. And specifically when we are studying the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that might happen a little more often because we are entering into the subject, and we may have to develop upon some of these verses in a more detailed fashion in order to appreciate the message in a more detailed way. But in general, it will be one class, one chapter, and we will have to cover 335 chapters if we have to finish the whole Bhagavatam. That is a So we are not looking that far right now. We are looking maybe first two cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. Maybe we may want to finish first two cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam in a 1 year time or less than 1 year, maybe 10 months or 12 months, like that.
Okay, Prabhuji. Second question I had is in terms of the organization of these chapters, is it in chronological order or is there some other structure to these chapters, Prabhuji?
We will talk about that when we are studying Srimad Bhagavatam. So you will see there are nested conversations in Srimad Bhagavatam. It starts with a conversation between Suta Goswami and sages of Naimisharanya. And as this conversation grows on, there are multiple other levels of conversation that get embedded in this conversation. And we will follow the structure of Srimad Bhagavatam as it is available with us right now. And we will try to decipher what that structure is as we go along. That will be the part of the main subject matter of the classes.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you. So any other question, specifically some feedback from the devotees who have joined me new? I see Hemlatha Rangarajan Mataji also. Mataji, welcome to the program. Yeah. So any comments, feedback, specifically from those who have joined us for the first time? Any feedback specifically looking forward from Ramaji, Ashok Sharma ji, or maybe Vijay, maybe Hemlatha ji, or Ruby iPhone, Venkata, Raman, Prabhu, and so on. So any feedback? Did you find it useful? Did you find it interesting, exciting enough to embark upon this journey? Any
Yes,
comments?
definitely.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's very, very interesting, and we hope we learn a lot from you.
Okay, sir. Venkat Raman Prabhu, are you also from Sri Ram Samiksha?
No, I'm from Chennai, ji. We are one of the ISKCON devotee.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Thanks a lot. Maybe next slide, I'll also present a small introduction about myself, because I thought that I forgot to introduce myself in the beginning of the class, but I'll do that in the next class. For the time being, you can know me as Keshav Gopal Das, initiated disciple of His Holiness Indradumna Swami, also connected with ISKCON for last maybe 20-21 years. So with that, I think I would like to conclude the class. Thanks a lot again for your active, attentive participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna to all.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, ji.
Thank you, Ji.